Alrighty. Good evening, everybody. We are back on another episode of Awoken with Aulden on Awoken Wednesdays as our emphasis, and we have several big topics for you this evening. In particular, our main story of the night is going to be about Somalia. Have the Somalia fit on tonight. Decided to get a little festive with the themes, break out of the purple for the first time in a little bit, to give a little respect about the country that we're going to be dissecting and the territory that claims to be an independent nation from itself, Somaliland. We're also going to break down the president had some feisty comments in a cabinet meeting a day or two ago. Very reminded me of Trump 2016 energy. You know, he is at this cabinet meeting, all of a sudden starts going off on Somalian immigrants in the North Star state, goes off at the former Democratic vice presidential nominee in 2024. Some big comments and accusations put forward by the president. So we have a lot to get into tonight. Before I begin the main story, please go ahead and crush that follow button, like and subscribe to the channel. I need your support. I need your family's support. I need your friends to get involved as the main architect of this mission is to put America first. That is the overarching goal of it all. Okay, so now with that out of the way, I'll get into a few minutes of commentary before getting into the presentation tonight. So a quick little backstory if you're not aware of the whole story and situation is that around, I believe, a week, maybe a week and a half ago, started hearing these reports from local news organizations within the North Star state of Minnesota itself, saying that there's this huge fraud, taxpayer-funded fraudulent scheme, and more or less it's giving the main accusation is that the terrorist organization Al-Shabaab is receiving these taxpayer funds directly one way or another. And the second biggest charge is that the governor, Tim Walz, either knew about it or is complicit, or somebody within his inner circle or administration was aware. So that's where you're getting the firestorm collectively moving in on itself with that. So without further ado, let's get the presentation going tonight. And we will go and do a little history and current accusations with this. Okay, so I believe that we got it there. Okay, great. So Somalia versus Somaliland, pirates, power, and politics. So with the main image, the thumbnail of the slide, not of the YouTube thumb, is that you have a couple things come to mind very quickly. You have soldiers on the screen, that indicates and signals battle, conflict, violence, aggression. You have the boats in the middle, a generic, almost all Americans know this country because of the Somali pirates, and the generic accusation, not even accusation, but more of the movie, the common meme nowadays, the the fella kind of points at you and says, "I am the captain now." That is the major takeaway, I'd say, of most Americans understand about this country. But I don't think a lot of Americans understand that the history behind this country. And even though it is considered third world corrupt, it doesn't mean that there's not important history and stuff that we should know and understand about it. So quickly, as I always try to do about these countries, the geographical advantages within the nation. So you have, as I discussed last week, on the other side of this nation, you have Yemen and the Houthis. They're bombing on the Red Sea. The other side, you have the Somali pirates. It's a very strategic location on the Horn of Africa. The longest coastline in mainland Africa, controls access to the Gulf of Aden and the Indian Ocean, near Bab el-Manab choke point, and borders Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Kenya. So that's a quick little background. Pre-colonial Somali clans, something that will become apparent tonight as I discuss with you the history of the country, is that clan warfare almost defines 90 to 95% of the violence and the conflict and all of the disputes. Major clans: Durad, Hawaii, Dur, Rawayan. Subclans define alliances and conflicts. The major players behind the major players deal. Clan elders traditionally mediate disputes. People respect their elders. Clan identity continually shapes modern politics, as we even saw in the United States last month when we were on the election night stream with you. There was a dispute if the ethnic group should vote for, oh goodness, I can't remember the fellow's name, not Jacob Frey, but the Somalian that ran against him. And there was disputes about the reason he lost is that the clans cannot unite around him within the culture itself. And the foundation of Somalia's social structure is strengthened with these clans. European colonization. So the British control in the north, British Somaliland, Italian rule in the south, Italian Somaliland, and colonial borders deepen clan divisions. Competing administrations shape future instability. And the foundation for later political fragmentation is laid and presented out. Independence and early unity. In the early 1960s, British and Italian territories unify as the Somali Republic. It's a short-lived democratic period, doesn't last particularly long. Waves of national optimism and pan-Somali identity. The greater Somalia vision emerges, and early institutions struggle to balance clan interests. So here's the first fella that is very important for you to understand in Somalia history. Siad Barre, his dictatorship, gained power, or really conquered power in a military coup in 1969 into the democratic era. So as I mentioned, it only lasted around a decade, a little less. He established a Soviet-aligned socialist regime, which at the time, take your history into account, the Cold War between the United States and the USSR is ongoing. So it's seen as a swing state geopolitically. Heavy propaganda and personality cult is formed, and clan favoritism, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the clan warfare, clan identity is paramount in this country and culture and society. Human rights abuses escalate, and the regime weakens after a war with Ethiopia, a neighbor. A little bit more about this fellow. So, as I mentioned, he's an important figure that is worthy of understanding and learning about in Somalian society. Seized power, as I mentioned, in the 1969 military coup and built that Soviet-aligned regime. Ruled through propaganda, clan favoritism, other unethical means, launched a disastrous war against Ethiopia, and eventually, over time, economic instability, collapse, internal resistance weakened the regime. Other clans had other thoughts in mind. So, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, now the Cold War is ongoing, the United States and the USSR. I remember even my father and other history teachers when I was growing up discussed they had, when people in my generation had almost like an earthquake drill you get under the desk, they would have drills to get under the desk for if there was a siren, because that meant a nuclear weapon or some kind of catastrophic weapon or bomb was heading their way. So just consider that for a quick moment. So Somalia becomes a strategic pawn in the US-Soviet rivalry. The USSR backs the dictator and his regime until the war with Ethiopia begins. The United States eventually switches sides and begins supporting Somalia shortly afterward. The superpower competition fuels military buildup and shifts in alliances within the clans, and the countries deepen regional instability. So just something for your consideration. So this genocide in particular against a clan, the Isaac clan, felt like it's definitely worth a slide, because when anytime one of the bases of Western civilization and America first has to be that innocent people, if they're children, women, by definition, are generally not considered targets. And a core pillar in America first, Western civilization has to be the innocent people do not deserve to die. That is wrong. End of story. And this dictator's regime targeted members of this clan, often women and children and other civilians. And the campaign included mass killings, airstrikes, and cities like Bararo and Hargeisa were heavily bombed and depopulated. As many up to 50,000 to 100,000 civilians passed away as a result. And it caused a refugee crisis in Ethiopia, and atrocities fueled Somaliland's independence movement. So in 91, you have a turning point. The regime is tossed to the side. He's out of here. Clan militias overthrow opposition clan militias. They toss them. The central government collapses overnight. It's gone. And the capital city descends into warfare. There's no functioning national army or institutions. There's nothing going on, no leadership. Massive displacement and humanitarian crisis follows, and Somalia enters a prolonged period of statelessness. Now you always have a power vacuum. As I discussed last night with you, that in Lebanon, when the Lebanese civil war was happening, people are afraid. The basic necessities, if those are not met, it becomes a crisis and a power vacuum. And similar to how Hezbollah formed, as I mentioned last night, Hezbollah, they built schools, hospitals, other institutions that made it for the Shiite population in southern Lebanon to turn the cheek, turn the other way if something they didn't like was happening, because they felt represented. That's what people want for their government, is to feel represented. At the end of the day, they want to be heard. So these warlords start forming in Somalia. Armed factions carve the capital city into rival territories. These technicals become symbol of militia power. The economy collapses. Looting replaces governance. Repeated failed peace agreements and a humanitarian crisis worsens across the country. So a big turning point in the United States relations and how we see the nation. Black Hawk Down, 1993. The United States mission in the capital city targets warlord Mohammed Farah Aidid, and 2 Black Hawk helicopters are shot down, resulting in the deaths of 12.5 American soldiers. The battle shocks public opinion within the United States, eventually resulting into the United States withdrawal and reshaping the future intervention policy going forward. And so now we're at the beginning of the decade. Rise of Islamic Courts Union. Early 2000s. Grassroots courts restore order in the capital city. Reduce crime and reopen major roads. Broad support from business community. Hardline elements gain influence within the movement. Ethiopia, then backed by the United States, invades to remove this leadership. And now here's where we can start to begin tying the Minnesota scandal back to Somalia. You have the rise of Al-Shabaab, the leading terrorist organization. To date, a radical faction emerges from the defeated ICU. They launch insurgencies against Somalia government and African Union forces. They control large rural areas in southern Somalia. Eventually, they start conducting major attacks within Somalia, Kenya, and Uganda. And a United States drone campaign intensifies, targeting the leadership of the terrorist organization. So that's a quick background on how they began. So here's where Somaliland becomes itself. Declared independence in 91. And to give them credit, there is a stable government and what the West would define as a good enough democracy. Maybe there's some shady stuff. It's significantly better than Somalia, though. It holds regular elections and maintains its own military power. However, it's not internationally recognized and, again, more stable than southern Somalia. Why does the world not recognize Somaliland, though? You would think after, as I just mentioned, the UN is always, in the United States and in the West, want democracy, want equal rights, etc. Well, you have to go back in history a little bit with the African Union. Generally, they're opposed to changing colonial era borders. There's a fear of triggering secession movements across the entire continent. Somalia's federal government refuses to accept the independence of Somaliland. That's a big thing. That's something that South Sudan got from Sudan. That's why we recognize Sudan and not, excuse me for one moment. That's why we recognize Somalia, but not Somaliland, is that South Sudan got that independence vote from regular Sudan. That gave them the legitimacy, and that was because there was another genocide in South Sudan, well documented by several global actors. So the United States and the European Union prioritize stability in the capital city. Recognition could inflame Ethiopia-Somalia tensions, and despite stability, Somaliland still claims their own independence to this day. So here is the president of Somaliland, Abri Hadi Mohammed Abdullahi, elected in November 2024. So a little over a year ago. Or around, actually, yes, a little prior to a year ago, excuse me. Since taking office, he has promoted dialogue with Somalia. He's like, hey, I'm a new guy. I'd love to talk with you. Let's grab a coffee. Let's sit down at the table. No BS. We're going to chit chat. His administration works to strengthen Somaliland's institutions, and he strongly desires to seek international recognition for Somaliland and not reuniting with Somalia. Emphasizes good governance and reform. So a quick little tidbit about that fellow. Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, the incumbent president of Somalia, elected president after civil war, which really the civil war hasn't really ended, is because there's still clan warfare continues to this very moment. December 3rd, 2025, they're still killing each other. They're still trying to beat each other up as they were the decades prior. Faced an Islamist insurgency by al-Shabaab, aimed for reconciliation among the clans, and dealt with corruption and political crises. Hasn't been overthrown, so he's done enough for now. Somalia's current government. I did a little tidbit about Somaliland's current infrastructure. But Somalia, the president leads the federal government, faces, again, the ongoing insurgency from al-Shabaab, which is always a risk, probably, if not the single biggest threat to the regime's survival, but cannot unify federal member states, relies heavily on international support, and security, corruption, and clan politics remain the biggest obstacles in any progress by Somalia. So here you saw this around a month ago. This was even before the scandal started breaking out a little bit in Minnesota. the November 2025 U.S. Special Forces deployment. New detachment arrives in the country. They support an opposition group opposed to al-Shabaab. They target high-value terrorist leadership cells. And it counters Ethiopia-Somalia border tensions while protecting Red Sea and Gulf of Aden shipping routes. And that's a callback to the other side of that, which the Houthis control and possess in Yemen. So here's where we get very recently. Now we're talking 10, 11, a dozen, 13, 14, 15 days ago. Minnesota scandal becomes mainstream. Allegations claim Minnesota taxpayer funds were misused. That's a big no-no. If you're America first, the taxpayer dollars needs to go to America and American citizens and the taxpayers. Investigations examine links to Somali diaspora networks. Many have raised concerns that cash and money may have flowed to extremist elements within Somalia. And it raises major questions about oversight and state leadership, the competency of Governor Timmy Walz, and it sparks national debate over immigration fraud and security. What the heck is going on here? Why did this Minnesota scandal explode this year? New federal investigations revealed larger fraud networks, much larger than anyone could have ever expected before. Whistleblowers exposed years of ignored red flags. Election season increased the political pressure on Walz. We are around 11 months away from the 2026 midterms. Keep the calendar in mind. And the rising diaspora influence drew national attention, and the flag controversy reignited public anger, as we'll get into that in a second. Fallout from the scandal. Majority of fraud charges dismissed as cases collapse. Walz's administration has been warned and is being warned about growing anti-government sentiment. The complex case raised concerns about taxpayer abuse, scandal-fueled Minnesota, GOP criticism of Walz, while additionally American criticism, taxpayer criticism. And the debacle became a liability for Walz's re-election, and he's running for a third term in 2026. Timmy's Walz and oversight failures. The Walz administration has been accused of weak financial oversight, which, as governor, people are going to work 5, sometimes 6 days a week, sometimes working 2 jobs. And if you're screwing over their money and their taxpayer dollars, they're going to have a lot of people not happy at you. And that's your number one position. This dude was almost the vice president of the United States, was a coin flip away probably last November. State agencies reportedly ignored red flags for years. Lax auditing allowed fraudulent networks to continue to prosper and grow. And critics argue Walz protected politically important Somali groups and not other citizens in the population. And the failure to respond quickly worsened the scandal's scale. Not a good look for the gov. Okay, so that is the presentation for the evening, but I will continue the monologue. We got a couple, before we begin, we have a few comments here at, we have, let's go to Somalia. Somalia has the longest coastline on mainland Africa, 3,300 kilometers, And that's a big scandal. Absolutely, Mr. 940. That is a large scandal at hand. And as I mentioned about the flag scandal, not even scandal, but the controversy surrounding the flag is you have the new state flag that the incumbent governor, Tim Walz, revealed looks a hell of a lot more like Somalia than the old Minnesota. You cannot deny that. It's a very, I'll pull up some images real quick. I don't have, but you can kind of see it for yourself here. And let's see if I can share the screen with this image and just let you know how significantly it changed short amount of time. Because here, let's go. Okay. Let's see if that worked. Okay, good. So here, just look. There's kind of a blue, but it's not the same blue. And if you remember in the presentation, you have the Somali star looks very similar to the star on the left side of the new Minnesota flag. So we're talking about a significant shift in culture. And who did he make that new flag for? Or even if there was a public vote, because I remember in my home city back home in Indiana had some kind of vote or discussion. If you're a strong executive of a state, you could have shot that stuff down and said, hey, we're not doing this. I'm afraid that the culture is changing too quickly and it's not representing Minnesotan values, and it could have done something different, but he caved because he knows that he was either, he was compromised with this or is fearing the political retribution of the Somali community in that state. You even see the mayor, Jacob Frey, every other word he says is in Somalian now. What the hell kind of a mayor is that in America to be speaking a foreign language every other word or every other sentence? That's not America first. That's not that does not represent the true values of the North Star State. Okay, so we'll do a quick check on. We got a wonderful comment by Chucky P67. Coincidence? I think not. Yeah, like how can that's not? It's not a coincidence. He was fearing some kind of backlash, and he should be fighting for our values instead. You know, Somalians, at least who I know, I don't believe they built Minnesota. You know, I believe there was a crisis after the Civil War and after that dictator fell in the 90s that caused a mass growth in population in the state. So I think absolutely. We got some American flags here. Let's go. America first, Chucky P. Let's go. Okay, so we will go with Twitter real quickly. And we'll see if anyone is talking about this online. We do love to check Twitter because we know there each reigns on the platform. Okay, so let's see. Nancy Mace considering retiring early, threatening the Republican Party's slim House majority. That's, as I mentioned last night, we saw some reports about the Republicans could lose their majority before even the midterms because of people wanting to retire. Some context on the Congresswoman. She's probably faced internal pressure for signing Congressman Massey's discharge petition for the Epstein files. She's probably had that for months. She's running in hopes to become the first governor or the next governor of South Carolina. Not the first female, because at least Nikki Haley won before that. So here's something. If Nancy Mace retires early from Congress, a special election would be held before the midterms. Trump won this district by 13 points last cycle, and the seat could be winnable for Democrats given the current environment. Yeah, like we saw last night, the chick running for Congress, I can't remember, the blonde lady. I believe she had a 13-point swing towards the Democrats in that district, and that district was a much less favorable than this one even seems to be. So there could be some danger. We'll have to wait to see. Okay. Oh, something I forgot to mention in the PowerPoint. Earlier today, the My Pillow guy announced his candidacy to challenge Timmy. That would be, I'm not sure if he will be the nominee. However, I remember last time he was considering it and eventually backed off. But now, heck, man, who knows? It's 2025. We're 27, 28 some odd days away from the new calendar year. Life is, the world is your oyster. Do whatever you think will do it. Okay, so let's go to see if anyone has seen anything about Tim Walz. Okay. Franklin finds fraud in Minnesota. Franklin finds that Tim Walz is a fraudster. And this is relating to the meme by Secretary of War Hegseth's tweet, I believe 2 to 3, maybe 4 days ago, about blowing up the narco-terrorism boats off the coastline in Venezuela. This meme has popped up in 10-fold, 25-fold since then. From Chicago Ray, at Chicago One Ray, I'm calling on at the Justice Department to arrest Tim Walz today. Hit that like button if you agree. They will see this. Let them hear you. Yeah, like something like this is treasonous. Truly, if you're actually complicit and taxpayer funds not going towards prioritizing American citizens and you're Minnesotans first, that is quite treasonous. Let's go to, all right, that's another tweet from, yeah, we've seen Jesse Waters. Yeah, you got to be a little careful on some of these because some of them are a little outright aggressive. But okay, here, yeah, let's watch this guy. And we're going to restart the flag controversy. I don't believe the sound is on. Here, I'll turn the sound up for you. But as I mentioned about 5 to 10 minutes ago, you saw the flag, as I discussed the flag change and why it did, and how the new flag really doesn't resemble that old flag at all.
All right, ready. Whoa, wait a minute. There, that's better. All right, ready. Whoa.
Whoa. Okay, so, and again, I wish people would hire better marketing teams when they redo stuff. I'm not saying that stuff should never not be redrawn or changed. But like the Cracker Barrel logo, all of these new rebrands, the McDonald's rebrand stinks. I loved it when it was red and yellow and the French fries were on the roof of the building. Now it's lame. It's gray. It's depressing as hell. It's not attractive looking. Why do all of this rebranding stuff make it look less authentic? It makes it look further lame, and I wish they would do better with that. And let's see if we can find one more nugget maybe on this Twitter timeline. Okay. That's a little goofy. Yeah, we'll end it on this. Yeah, this is probably what his face was when he got the push notification from the Trump admin saying, "You're in trouble, buddy." So let's go back to the main stream. We got more American flags from at Henry Wilhelmus 7573. Love the patriotism tonight. Love. Hey, this is the most. You guys are part of history on Awoken with Aulden. This is the largest audience I've ever achieved, live audience. So very thankful. If you're watching right now, you should know that you're a part of something very big and historical, because we will continue to push our values and America first to the max. Okay, so I will open up the floor for questions or comments or concerns, or if you would like me to attempt to explain something a little better. But if everyone is, we've done 2 nights in a row now. So if people are a little tired, that's perfectly fine. We will, wrap up and head towards next week. You always got to check my cell phone, though, because some people do love to text in. But yeah, we're at a very, regardless of what you see, so here's, in terms of the politics of it all, the cabinet meeting the other day, you've seen a increased even response from the admin about this. I think this Somalia issue can unify all factions of the GOP. And what do I mean by that? Is that, as I've mentioned a couple times now, really in the summer, you have some dissatisfaction with the admin, okay, from some people in the party. But now this is something, what was the main issue that got him in the White House last year? It was immigration. If he can get a dub on this, that would improve his poll numbers and get them back up to what they were right after the election. So there's a huge opportunity, I believe, for the president to do well with this. But I'll leave the floor open for another 60 seconds. Don't have any other additional topics to cover tonight. Just wanted to keep it strictly on Somaliland, and the Minnesota scandal, because this is pretty big. And there will be some more geopolitical content soon. It looks like Nicolas Maduro's days, his time in office may be numbered. There's other conflicts brewing in the Middle East. Of course, there's always other places in Africa and around the entire globe. I'll check this one more time. Okay, so yeah, we had a fan text in. Any idea about next week's show? May make it another Venezuela episode. May make it another, or not another, but may try to go into what the parties are starting to think about for the midterms next year. Because, as I mentioned, with Nancy Mace and a couple other members of Congress, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, announcing she's calling it quits come January 5th of next calendar year. We have a couple, the politics are going to start getting a little real. The presidential, it's a 4-year cycle. And the first year is always the year that may be the most boring year for the average viewer, because just got into office, there's no political pressure, you're coming in off of a high, and usually people aren't paying attention that deeply at the moment necessarily. So, but the second year you got midterms, and the parties got to start pandering to the voters again. So we're going to see that. That's going to ramp it up very quickly, especially after Christmas, after the New Year's. So we may do a little deep dive into that. Okay, so we got a question. Thoughts on the Puntland region in Somalia? Thought they might secede from Somalia, like Somaliland. Yeah, they might punt themselves out of the country and try to get their own independence. From what I believe about that sect of the country, is that this clan has developed themselves to be enough of a strength to where they might be able to do that, actually. And that's something that the incumbent president of Somalia is also having to balance, because that dude's got a tough time. And it's not even saying that he's an ethical or good guy necessarily. It's that it's just another challenge and stressor for him and his inner circle to deal with. So, yeah, if the Puntland region and clan view themselves as a formidable force enough, they may try and succeed, but they're going to run into the same challenges that Somaliland currently faces. So, wonderful question by @ChuckyP67. And okay, great. So I believe, unless if someone says something in the next few moments, we'll call it at that on Awoken Wednesday. I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. This was awesome. Going to get clips out from last night's show and tonight's show. Try to get them, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's going to kind of be the new schedule, I believe, with this. And you have been awoken with Aulden. All right, good night, everybody. Much love. Continue to thank you for the kind comment. Great show, Patriot. Yes, sir. Let's go. America first. Much love, everybody.